Hello and welcome. This is the Coincidence Cafe. We meet once a month, hosted by the Coincidence Project, and we have new co-hosts and new topics and themes every time. And we also have a speaker series once a month. You can find out more about that on our website, which is thecoincidenceproject.net, all spelled out. And we have a couple of group norms just to remind you. This might be your first time, and we definitely have some regulars that are returning. So hello and welcome. Sorry about that blur just now. That's my cat's tail. She always joins me at the computer. So some of our group norms are to speak from our own experience in the first person. So you could say, I had this experience, or in my view, or in my experience, it's been like blank. We're investigating and inquiring into our experiences and the nature of reality, but none of us know definitively. So we want to make sure we have space for everyone to speak and that we have respect for each other's viewpoints and stories and perspectives, including when our own viewpoint or perspective may be different. So please make sure that you're always treating one another with a lot of space and grace and respect. And then we'll go into breakouts. Today, we're going to do just one longer breakout after our first co-host of the day, who is Brooke, presents a bit. And in that breakout, we ask that you hold one of their stories confidential. So you might share something that you learned or heard from a story, but you wouldn't identify the speaker. So I wouldn't say, oh, my friend Brooke, and give her last name even, in the breakout, gave this long story and then share details of that. I wouldn't do that. So you might share a little something you learned, but not identifying the person. And if we come back and we're debriefing and you'd love to have your partner share something they shared in the breakout, please invite them rather than telling their story or speaking for them. Please just invite them. Like I might say, hey, Brooke, I loved what you shared in our breakout. Are you comfortable, or would you like to share anything about that with the group? Because when we're back with the full group, it's completely up to you if you'd like to share or not share. There's no pressure. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. And then we've had one of our cafe regulars who came a number of times. She probably came to at least 15 different cafes. She was our co-host twice, at least twice that I can recall, named Adele Aldrich. She wrote a series of beautiful I Ching books illustrated with her own art, gorgeous art. And I'll try to share a link to her website in the chat in a few minutes when I have a moment. But she passed away in the past week. I just learned about it earlier in the week, a couple days ago. So I just wanted to take a moment just in silence for us to just honor the passing of a member of our community who we treasured, who we value. And we've talked a lot in various sessions about communications from those who are departed. So I also welcome those. I welcome her to still be part of our Coincidence Cafe community. And sad that she will not be joining us on the physical plane anymore. Adele Aldrich was a real treasure. And as Mary Kay is posting in the chat, she was a fellow sister of the I Ching. She and Mary Kay co-hosted together on the I Ching, and Adele also co-hosted with Christine Clawley on the nature of time, and shared lots of stories of her beloved Sausalito, California, where she lived. So just join me for a few moments of silence here as we honor a member of our community who has passed on. So thank you for letting us take that moment to think of and honor Adele. You can imagine her in your mind, even if you did not get to share a cafe with her. We're going to talk a lot today about some of the more complex and interesting types of coincidences that we can have. And Brooke's going to speak for us first to start framing that. But I wondered in the chat if You might add a type of coincidence that has occurred more than once, maybe regularly or maybe intermittently throughout your life. Could be a coincidence of a spirit animal or certain numbers or, numerology is a big one. It could be your relationship with tarot or the I Ching, that divination seems to point out things that come to be. There are coincidences of, I think of someone and they call. I think of someone and I run into them. There's coincidences of, I know I need to find something. I don't really know even where to begin, but then I find it in an unexpected way. That's serendipity. Usually we use that. Serendipity is the term to describe that. So if you have a sense of some of the coincidences you've had that are meaningful, I see a few people have posted some numbers that have recurred, prophetic dreams. Another person say, I'm typing a word and then I hear it on the radio or TV. In music or electronically delivered coincidences. Another series of numbers that are auspicious for someone. We've had 444, 1111, 33, and 222. One of our high frequency coinciders says they just happen every day. And another says lots of angel numbers lately, and hearing and speaking a word simultaneously. So just as what you say leaves your mouth, it's echoed through TV or the radio or someone else around you says it. Someone always getting the 11s, the 1111, the 511, the 611. Someone has the type of trying to call someone and then it won't connect for some reason, and then it turns out the call was not needed. And it's so funny that YouTube has this, Zoom today has this funny thing where it's to find several people with my name. So it's as if I'm posting to all of you, but it's actually not me. So needing to find jobs and then bumping into someone who was looking for someone with just my background. So yes, coincidences that help us find jobs or new opportunities, new friends, new significant others, educational opportunities, things that happen that way. More 1111s. Someone was about to type a message about words and someone else typed it in the chat before she could get to it. Lots of 44s showing up recently. Also car number plates with the repeating letters like XXX or Triple Z. Coincidences related to roses are happening for one of our community here. Yep, an idea pops up in a head and then that opportunity shows up. Yeah, so manifesting types of coincidences. So anyway, we have a wide variety and there are some coincidence types that maybe you haven't even thought about yet. So that's part of what we'll try to do today is prompt your thinking and maybe expand your sense of what's possible. And I invite now, I'm adding the spotlight on our colleague Brooke, who is joining us today to co-host. And thank you so much for being with us, Brooke. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you. I can't be on Spotlight and also do gallery view for myself, can I?
I think you can. It just means in the recording, it has the spotlighted folks up rather than the full gallery. So it provides a little more anonymity for those of you out in the general group, and but you can view however you prefer.
I like to see everybody. So
yeah.
Okay, cool. Hi, folks. Good to see a lot of familiar faces. I have been coming to cafe for about a year and a half or so. I try to come every month. I haven't written any books. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm just here as a regular to share some stories. I do have synchronicities happen to me quite often, and they seem to start out as something sort of small and then like grow into something bigger. And so I'm going to share a few stories like that today. I don't really have them with numbers, which a lot of people have that they put in the chat today. So I've had a couple like that, but that's not something that happens to me often. They're just complicated, even though they aren't always a particular theme. I have had some themes, but I'm not really going to get into that today. So I'm going to just tell a few stories. Some of them are short, and then I'll end with kind of a longer one if I have time to. So the first one I wanted to share was when I was planning to do a topic today, Juliet and I were going back and forth about what to do. And one of them that popped in my mind was today's topic, but I had other ideas. And I was thinking about it. And then within like a day or two, I got a text from a friend. And it was, she had had a synchronicity with her boyfriend. It was kind of just a cute little story. It wasn't a very particularly powerful synchronicity, but it was a synchronicity for her nonetheless. And then she had shared her story with a friend. And what made this story more interesting is that her friend had the same synchronicity with her boyfriend that week. So now they've had a shared synchronicity, right? That was sort of small, but then they both had the same small synchronicity. So now it's kind of become something more interesting. And then her telling me that the week I was thinking, should I do a topic about complicated synchronicities with multiple people? Now has made this meaningful for me in a way. So I wanted to start by sharing that story because I think it's cool. And that was confirmation for me that I should talk about this. So a lot of my synchronicities do involve like multiple people. That I guess is a theme for me. It's not just between me and one person. It's like there's always another person involved. So that's the first story I want to share. Um, the next story is about sort of how I ended up coming to learn about this group and Bernie. I was having a lot of synchronicities a few years ago, and I was working at the library, and I thought, I wonder if there's a book on synchronicities. And I looked, and that day at my library, there was a book, and it was Bernie's book. So that's already kind of cool, right? Started my story, something small. And this morning I thought, how many of Bernie's books are in libraries? So I just had to look it up before I told this story. And that book was in like 50 libraries. At the moment is in 50 libraries. It's your first one of your earlier books, the one that's white with the red. Not
Connecting with Coincidence, 2016.
2016. Okay. So, this is a few years ago. There were probably more copies of that book back then. But nonetheless, I mean, there's a lot of towns in America. So the fact that this book was there was pretty cool, I think, statistically. So I brought the book home and made myself a big bowl of popcorn, sat down. Within a few pages, Bernie has a story about popcorn. I'm like, all right, this is going to be interesting. And 3/4 of the way I get through the book, and on this particular page, Bernie references this study about happiness that was done in Framingham, Massachusetts, like I guess, somewhat famous study people know about. I grew up in Framingham, never heard about this story. And nothing happens in Framingham, Massachusetts. It's like suburbia Massachusetts. It's not interesting. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my hometown, right? Which is cool, but here's where the story gets interesting. The day before, I had talked to my friend, a new friend of about a year, and we were talking about my hometown, Framingham, which we never talked about before. She was asking me about it. I was telling her this is where I'm from. And in that same conversation, which lasted like an hour, we had lots of deep conversations. We had talked about happiness and the meaning of happiness. And like, I was struggling to find the words of how it was connected to social connections and things. And the next day, I'm reading Bernie's book about Framingham and the happiness study. And it's like the words are on the page of what I was trying to tell my friend. So, pretty cool, kind of blew my mind. I kind of got like freaked out almost. And I, looked into this group and found the cafe and so on. And so that's how I ended up here. And to go back, Juliet mentioned when we were talking about this, I told her this story, that there's a thing called like a library angel, like where you find a book at the right time. And I worked in libraries for 10, 15 years, and I hadn't particularly heard that term. So I thought that was cool if that's happened to you. Certainly message me about that or mention it in your groups today if it comes up. But that's another story I wanted to share, which I consider sort of a meta coincidence because it was in a book about coincidences, right? Like, yeah, that's a fun story of how we ended up here. Okay, a third story, and I've got 4 stories total. So this is my third story, right? And I'm at the park bird watching, and my mom calls me and she says, I'm at the store and there's these pillows with birds on them. And I'm thinking about getting them. Should I get them? And I'm like, yes, I'm at the park doing some bird watching. Get the pillows. She's like, yeah, but my grandmother is superstitious about birds and they're bad luck. And I'm like, they're not bad luck. I love birds. They're messengers. You know, I get herons coming all the time for me as birds of synchronicity bird for myself. So she, you know, she gets the pillows, right? I leave the park. I go to the store, get a piece of pizza, I park my car, and on the screen, the song shows up on the radio. And it says, Disturbance at the Heron House. This is a song by REM, which I had no idea they had a song about herons. So I'm like, this is interesting. Okay. I go into the store next to the pizza place. There's a little thrift store. I go in, there's these heron statues there, these large heron statues. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get these statues and I'm going to bring them home. I put them in my car. I have a lot of stuff in my car. I bring in a lot of that stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to bring these statues in later. I don't have time. I don't want to do another trip. The next morning, I call my mom. And I'm like, what's this thing about the birds? Like, why are they bad luck? And she says, well, they're not bad luck completely. It's just that my grandmother said you can't have birds in the house. It's okay if they're outside the house, but they can't be inside the house. And lo and behold, I've left them in my car and not brought them in for some reason. And so they're on my porch now. I haven't brought them in yet. I don't know why the birds are bad luck inside. I have to get to the bottom of that. But I love that story. It's kind of like me, my mom, my mother's grandmother. Like there's sort of multiple people involved. And it's like this voice, I'm not bringing them in. I don't know why, you know, and it all comes to fruition in some way. So that's my third story. I love birds. I got to get to the bottom of that. And my fourth story is another story involving my mom and some ancestors. My mother's birthday, this is in February. She's turning 70. She was turning 70. And I wanted to get 70 birthday cards for her as a gift from family members. So I got about 60 something from friends and family, and I was short some cards. And I was like, I'm going to reach out to some estranged family members that she hasn't talked to in 10 years. There was this fallout, and I'm going to see if I can get cards from them and just, you know, fix this family drama that we've had in our lives. So I draft a email to this cousin, David, who she was very close with. And it's heartfelt, you know, I saved it as a draft and I don't send the email right away. And that's not the kind of person I am. I write something, I send it. Like, so for me to pause and say, I'm going to wait on this is interesting and out of character for me. So a couple of days goes by and a friend calls me and her aunt has passed away. Now her aunt, and she's like, can you come to the funeral to support me? I don't know this woman or anything, but I want to support my friend. So I say, sure. So she sends me a link to the funeral and the obituary. I pull it up and it's in Rhode Island. I live in Massachusetts. It's about an hour and a half from my house. I haven't been to Rhode Island in a decade. I haven't been to this cemetery except one time for a funeral. And I pull up the information, and there's a lot of stuff in this story, which I don't have time to tell all the details. But first of all, the girl whose mother passed away, who I don't know, her name is Brooke. Okay, that's interesting. Like, my name is not that common. Then within the obituary, there's tons of synchronicities about my family connected to, there's inside jokes there for my family that they have the same inside joke in the obituary. There's people's names in there, like the name Maurice, which is a name connected to the estranged cousin, which is, again, not common. Just lots of stuff in the obituary. So I'm like, I got to go to this funeral, right? Like, this is a calling. I get out there, and this estranged family, right, is buried. Also, I forgot to mention, it's like the family, David, this estranged cousin I wrote the email to, all of this family, his dad, this whole side of the family is buried at the same place as the funeral, which is steps away. Like, I go to the funeral, and like my family is buried like steps away from where this person is buried. And I visit my family, and I talk to them, and I say, can I have some signs? I would like some signs for my mom. I believe in all this stuff, but my mom, she's on the fence. So can I have some signs for my mom? And I ask. And I get home, and I have a message on Facebook, Facebook Marketplace, from a stranger from the time I was at the cemetery. And it's the same last name as these ancestors, like which is not a common last name. And it's not like unheard of, but it's not common, and I don't know anybody with this last name. And so I get a message from someone. And then within the next 2 weeks, 3 more people with this last name show up. Another one from the internet for me. Somebody in my brother's life comes to help him. He's struggling, and that person has the same last name. And then my mom meets somebody in her complex in Florida with the same last name from Rhode Island, which is, again, where the cemetery is. So it's like all these people come through. My mom is actually like floored, which was what I asked for. And then to wrap this story up, which is long, is the last part of the story is I told a friend all this. I told a friend all this stuff is happening to me. And in our same phone conversation, my friend mentioned a medium, somebody who talks to people that have died, named Matt Frazier, who is like popular. He has a TV show. I didn't know him. I don't follow that world. I've never seen a medium. And she mentions him in the same conversation. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to look this guy up. Who is this guy? And I Google him, and he's a big deal. He's like $15 million net worth, right? And he's got a TV show. And I'm like, who is he? I Google him, and he lives in 2 places. Where does he live? He has 2 homes. One is Cranston, Rhode Island, the same town we had the funeral in, okay, where my family is buried. And 2, the town my mom lives in Florida. Like, I'm like, all right, this has just become like this story. I have to contact him. We have to do a reading. Like, we have to do a reading. I've never done a reading with a medium. Let's do it. And he's booked up for 5 years. So there's no way to see him one-on-one. We go to his group. He has a group Zoom thing, and there's hundreds of people on there. And it's like, maybe you'll get a reading. Like 5 people get a reading, right? And we go, and guess what? You want my story to end with, we got an amazing reading. And you know what? We didn't. We did not get a reading. And so that is the end of my story. It was like building and building and building, and then that's the end. And it's a letdown, and I don't know why. And that's a conversation for another cafe. Why do we get led down these crazy layers, and then it just stops? Maybe the story's still going and it will come around one day, but that's the end of my story. So thank you for listening to my long stories. I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I know we're going to move to breakouts. And the question really is, which Juliet will put in the chat box, like, do you have these complicated coincidences, like, that are just, they start small and they grow, like what I'm saying? Or maybe it's like what we talked about earlier in the chat, where it's the same type of coincidence and that keeps happening, even though they're not long stories, it's like the same type. Or any pattern you notice about your coincidences. That's today's question. Juliet, want to jump in?
Yeah, so we've had a nice chat conversation happening also as you're speaking, you're inspiring more comments. So yeah, so the first story I'll just add, in case this prompts people's thinking, that maybe you could call it a mirror coincidence, that two sets of friends had the exact same coincidence occur independently of each other and happened to be prompted to tell each other that they had each had a coincidence about ice cream with their boyfriends in the same period of time. Very strange. But it's like a mirror between a couple of folks was set up. I've also heard mirror coincidence used to describe when someone reminds you of somebody, they physically look like them or they have their name. And then you learn more about them and they have more and more and more in common with the person who either physically resembles them or shares their same name. So there's something interesting about that. And then the library angel was wanting a book on coincidence, and there Bernie's book is. And bibliomancy is a term I've heard sometimes used when you're trying to find something, you need to find something. In this case, you described wanting to share with your friend more about the importance of connection, human connection for happiness, which was like the most astounding finding in that like 95-year-long Framingham study that studied the well-being of people in Framingham, Massachusetts over multiple generations. And what they found was that all health outcomes, how long they lived, how sick they were, their well-being throughout their life was deeply influenced by their connectedness. And not only that, but they learned that people lost weight better, quit smoking better, any kinds of goals they had set for themselves. They were more able to achieve those goals if they had a community of folks or at least one other person that they cared about who set that goal with them and they had a buddy. So there was like important things we learned about social psychology from the Framingham study.
Harvard has the other longevity happiness study, in case anyone's interested. There was another one on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So Harvard has another longevity happiness study. It's important to just speak those findings for all of us to recognize, the community we build here in Cafe, we're really giving each other support to have these interesting puzzling, inspiring experiences and to use them together. And it is going to positively contribute to the world and our well-being to do so. But, you were looking for words to describe that kind of phenomenon to your friend. And then you were already reading Bernie's coincidence book. And by coincidence, he describes a study. And by coincidence, it takes place in the town you grew up in that you never heard of this important study. So it's the first you're hearing about a study in your own backyard, and it's the words in your mouth that you wanted to share with your friend. So that one is meta because it has several layers operating simultaneously, but it's a bit of bibliomancy to find what we're looking for in a book. And now I think there's probably internet Googleomancy that we somehow find exactly what we need. We're searching for something else, and yet there's the answer to this other question. So we're not explicitly seeking the answer to a question that's in the back of our mind or something that's recently been something we thought about, but then there unexpectedly is the solution. So serendipity is sometimes used to describe that. And if it's in a book, bibliomancy or library angel, I sometimes hear you to use to describe that. And then your story of the hummingbird, yours was about herons primarily. And then Erin in our group posted that hummingbirds, herons, and blue jays are all frequent, meaningful coincidence birds for her. And Laura commented back, she just bought a hummingbird brooch for a cousin she's never met. And I mentioned that our speaker series last week was about spirit communication, especially with a departed loved one. And our speaker was Trish McGregor, and her story featured a hummingbird coming to speak for her sister after her sister unexpectedly passed away. It was her younger sister. And the whole family was present when the hummingbird came. And they all agreed that it was her presence coming back in the form of this hummingbird. So everybody in their family actually became more of a believer that there is an ability to still communicate with a departed loved one after they passed on. And many in her family were skeptics and thought she was just a sort of fringy weirdo. And not only that, they all got hummingbird tattoos. And Trish wore beautiful hummingbird earrings as she shared the story in our speaker series. So you guys can watch that on our YouTube channel. And hummingbirds were a huge theme in our November cafe. Julian was our host, and he described a hummingbird flying into his home, getting trapped in his office room, in his living room and office. He was able to catch the hummingbird in his hand, and it rested there gently and peacefully. And he was able to take it outside and release the little hummingbird. And then, Brooke has shared before in Cafe about the heron story and the series of heron events. But as she did so, I think the first time we talked about it was when David and Lillian Fortna were our co-hosts of Cafe, and they had cranes and herons in the room all around them. Their background was filled with herons and cranes. And other people on that call said, hey, look at my background. And they had herons and cranes. And then I had more cranes start to come, I think more cranes than herons after that event. And even though they're two different species of birds, they physically resemble each other a lot, Brooke pointed out. So I'm not good on all my species study of birds, need to take that on. But it's really interesting. We've had a lot of conversation in the past also about owls and cardinals and then the blue jays. So birds seem to, with their ability to fly up into the ether and come back to the land, they seem to be very good at picking up things from the ether, be representing or perhaps channeling in some way to us a sense of a departed loved one or some kind of message. And then we had one other comment that Liz in our group was hanging out in an LA fitness studio in a hot tub. That sounds really nice. I need to do that. And two guys there were talking about the relationship between self-reflection and action in the world. And she had just listened to one of Bernie's podcasts, Connecting with Coincidence, and his episode had just talked about that very topic. So she joined in on the conversation, had a good chat with them. So she had just listened to the right podcast to prime her to take part in a conversation and then unfold it around her. So these are all the kinds of coincidences, and there were many more in your story. The names repeating, asking for signs and receiving them, the people living in the same places unexpectedly, things moving forward, and a lot of series of things moving forward, and then suddenly a stop. And what's that about? Yeah, we don't know, but maybe it's not the end. Maybe it continues to
story might not
unfold.
be over yet. Exactly. I had more to say about that, but not for another time. But yeah.
Yeah, and another Liz, we have several Liz's with us today. Another Liz says she's had a trinity of linked coincidences on the same theme as well. And Greg, who's on the call here, lives in Florida. He's waiting for a heron to appear right now, but he says his band did get to play with before REM at a music festival. And that REM song you referenced was Disturbance at the Heron House, which is a really early REM song, because I was a huge REM fan growing up. Yeah. And it really early, was not a big single. It was before they were ever popular, long before Losing My Religion hit. I mean, that's really interesting to hear such a kind of strange song echoing your story of the birds. And we have another Julian, not our host from November, but another Julian, I think, on our call, that herons were a huge sign for both himself and his wife. And Sue has seen the geese flying overhead this morning.
They are considered messengers, I think, specifically those birds, but maybe all birds, but yeah.
Yeah. So we've given you lots of raw material, and we're going to give everyone, let me set up here. We're going to give people 20 minutes this time, so a little longer than usual. And we'll try to have 3 people in a room. Let me see, I'm checking things out right now. We might have one room with 4. And we just want to give you guys time to share some of your more interesting layered or mirrored or meta coincidences, and talk about some of these interesting unfoldings. And the pattern of things recurring over time can then become this more layered, more meaningful, more rich coincidence than just a one-off event that has meaning. So wherever that's striking you, we invite you to share stories or ask questions of one another. And please speak from the first person, and respect your colleagues and give them space to speak too. If you know you tend to speak really long, please watch the time. And everyone should switch over after about 6 minutes per person, and then that would leave a little extra time at the end for processing. So if you need to kind of go by the time clock, then about 6 minutes each would be perfect. We'll see you when you get back, and we'll debrief what's arising for everybody in the group. So I'm going to send everyone to the breakouts, and we'll see you in 20 minutes.
Myself, huh?
Did we lose Juliet? No, I don't see her all of a sudden. Oh no, there you are.
I'm
Okay.
here. Yeah, so I'm going to add spotlight on myself and Brooke. And we would love to hear from a couple of you. And then I'm actually going to, I think, lead us in just like a short guided practice inspired by my colleague in the breakout room, Allison. So she has inspired me with a wonderful question near the end of our breakout session that I'll share with everybody. But were there some interesting stories that arose in your breakouts that you might be willing to share? The long version of your story, and we won't have time for that. So I don't think if you want to share the long version of your story, please write it down. If it's 300 words or less, I invite you to also post it on our website. We have a story forum. In a moment, I'll post the story forum link in the chat. You can share your stories of 300 words or less. For longer stories, please start writing them down. We're going to be collecting longer stories. You could email them to me. We're working with a researcher, and he has done consciousness research, and he works with consciousness researchers internationally, and is a professor at Johns Hopkins, and he's training AI to help be an extra researcher to analyze lots and lots of stories and begin to learn all we can from one another's stories. So we won't have time for long stories. I would say you could make a comment perhaps on the type of stories that arose, or a question you have, or a very short summation of the story. I hate to have to cut anyone off, but we won't have time for the long story. So if it's more than about 2 minutes, I'll hop back in and encourage you to please write that down. Don't lose it. Capture it. Tell a friend, reinforce. They're like dreams. Our coincidence stories are like dreams. They can be ephemeral. And so the more we can tell them and record them, the more we hold them, we hang on to them, and then we can reflect on them better later. So I see Krista, delighted to have our friend Krista in the room. It's been a while. And then I see Tara, or Tara, however you pronounce, after. So Krista, why don't you come up and unmute, and I'll add spotlight on you.
Thank you, Juliet. Hello, everyone. So good to see you all and to be back. Well, Tara's going to go next, so I won't share too much of her story, but we had some fun, intricate synchronicities within our group. One of them being Tara shared her story about synchronicities of needing money and then having people hit her car and getting money from the insurance, which also happened to me in several different incidents as well. So we both had that in common. And then Diane shared a story about connecting through a medium to past loved ones and to her ancestors. And that's actually something I've been working on, connecting with my ancestors. So I got some great advice from both Diane and Tara on how to do that and how to listen better and tap into my clairaudience. And then Diane also did a nice little reading for us both based on our moon, our south nodes and north nodes, and Tara and I had opposite north and south nodes. So there were some fun, complex synchronicities that went on in our group.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Tara, why don't you come and add to this? I'm going to add the spotlight on you.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I think Krista summed it up very well. There were some lovely synchronicities within us as I shared my car stories of numerous times needing money and getting hit. She had several ones. There was another theme where nobody ever got hurt in any of these car accidents, and that was really, really lovely. And Diana also had some great stories about creating a quilt and a pattern that she was inspired to in velvet, and then finding out years later, one of her Irish ancestors, there was a photograph of that woman sitting in a chair with a velvet quilt around her. So it was just really lovely to see all the commonalities we had together.
Oh yeah, the last one too was Diane was married for 17 years. I was also married for 17 years. And then that's how it sparked the nodal thing. Apparently 17 years was
Yeah.
the nodal thing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And we love to see new coincidences unfold amongst between us because of our connecting. When Bernie and I were working to found the Coincidence Project, that was one of the things that we said, let's make sure to, open to, and where we can meet it with our ideas and our will to bake this into the DNA, that it's not about just studying the past, but also about creating new possibilities in the present moment and new possibilities in the future because of these moments. So when we see your coincidences and your connections in the group, people who've never met one another before, it's just makes, I feel like the Grinch all the time. My heart keeps growing like 10 sizes each day. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
So layered, like,
So
you
layered.
know, somebody in my group, and again, we're not sharing names unless people want to, had such a amazing layered story, which really mirrored the story I told. So many pieces of the story I told earlier about there were birds, and where they were bad birds, they're good birds and bad birds, and and there were names shared in our subgroup that we just had. It was just, my mind is a little bit blown from the breakout room I was just in, which mirrored my story.
Wow. That's beautiful. And, my grandmother was from England, and she was very superstitious about birds flying into the home. And I think this might be where the apprehension from your grandmother and mother might be a shared sense of when a bird enters the home. Often in myth and story, the certain birds within certain tribes on different continents, it's different birds because we don't even have all the same birds present, were the harbingers of death. They would come before a death.
Yes.
And the birds would come to signify that someone was going to be called, that someone
Yeah.
would be dying. And I think that's where the fear of the birds in the house comes from. It's not the image of birds. I think that might be an amplification of the fear of real bird. And it was wild birds. It wasn't about having pet birds either.
Right.
But different groups of people may have developed different added on superstitions. No, even a pet bird is too much. No, even the picture of a bird is too much. But I think they might stem from that thing. But my grandmother also said that the greatest luck you could have would be, and she was in England, so to have an English robin fly in your home as it turns spring, to come in out of the winter and fly in. And it was this auspicious sign. And multiple times through her life, an English robin, or even then an American robin when she lived in America, flew into her home, on the spring equinox or whatever, and so over and over, it actually, that the good luck birds came too. And the story Julian Gresser had shared with us in November about the hummingbird, that then he held this sweet bird in his hand. He saw that hummingbird as this beautiful messenger, I think, that could have been contained, and it would have hurt the bird to be inside. And so he was able to facilitate the freeing of the bird, and he felt himself liberated and lifted because of that experience, that he became the bird, and he felt more free because he helped the bird.
Part of the potential bad luck bird thing about having them in the house or in cages is that you're, like dimming their freedom, right? And there's a piece there to explore too.
Yeah. So I love all of this. Well, thank you again, Tara and Krista. I see Brian's hand and then Annie's hand, and then I'll take a minute after that to guide us in a short practice, and then we'll have a little more discussion before the end of our time at 1:30. So I'm going to take the spotlights away from a couple of our folks. I'm going to bring Brian up to share. Hi, Brian. Good to see you.
Hi, how are you? We had a little bit of technical difficulty with the third person, but Daniela and I were talking about something that I think would be germane to what Brooke was talking about with the medium, in that Daniela was getting all sorts of synchronicities that it was time, and I hope I'm not mischaracterizing what you said, Danielle, that it was time to leave her job. So she proceeded to start the process of quitting, and then things all fell apart. And in my experience, and also other spiritual practitioners will tell you this, one shouldn't get attached to an outcome. And when one assumes that they know what's going to happen, the universe will tend to pull the rug out from under people.
Totally.
Because you're not going with the flow, and attachment is one way of sabotaging the flow of that sort of thing. So my guess for Brooke, and I'm not sure, but my guess is that she made assumptions or was attached to the outcome with the medium, which would tend to sabotage that.
How could I not have been? But also, yes.
And that's something that's happened to me a lot as I was learning the process. I was so attached to things happening, and I really ended up hurting myself in some situations. Anyway, that's what Daniela and that's what we were talking about as we talked about synchronicities. We didn't really have meta-synchronicities in the way that Brooke experienced. One question I would have for Brooke, if I may, is that I was wondering if you've discovered any kind of correlations between astrological events and your meta-synchronicities, whether perhaps certain portals or events might open up at the same time you're experiencing these synchronicities.
That's a good question. I know a lot of people really connect to that world. A lot of people connect to numbers. A lot of people connect to astrology. I personally have not had much in that realm, or it's not something I paid attention to or feel called to.
Me neither.
So, and I don't feel very strongly about astrology personally, but I know a lot of people do. So I haven't noticed anything about that.
Yeah. All right. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But I do like your other comment about, attachment and yeah, I was like, we're gonna get a reading, and I'm telling everybody the story, and part of it is sometimes I get excited about these stories and then I share them like a lot, and sometimes I feel that oversharing them kills it somehow, kills the
Yeah,
flow.
it's not a good thing to do. It
Like I'm
takes you
not
out of the
holding the
flow.
magic in
It
myself.
there's a mechanic there, and it blocks the mechanic from working.
Which is why it's like I want to share these stories in Synchronicity Cafe. I want to share them on the website, but then I'm like, should I share them? That's a topic for another day. Anyway.
As long as you don't get attached, as long as you're just going with the flow, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a subjective thing where we want to record and how we want to record and if we want to record and where we might share, how we might share, if we might share. We just have to kind of pay attention to the intuitive voice within ourselves and take care of ourselves, because it may shift over time. An answer may one day be something and later it could be something else, and different stories may have different answers. This is one that's okay to share. This is one that's too special and private. For myself, I've found that by going with the flow and just opening up and sharing even the deepest stories, I get those stories reflected back to me and other people's stories by sharing them. I don't feel that I have curtailed or bound the magic in any way. I definitely feel like the magic is just exploded in my life even more through being part of the Coincidence Project, and more vulnerable and more transparent and more authentic and more honest and sharing more stories, and listening, being open to receive more stories. For me, it's all been a net gain, but there's still stories that are private or personal that I wouldn't tell. So,
Right.
Discernment, discretion, subjectivity, we just need to honor all of these things and just kind of weigh the factors. If there's a misgiving, there's something behind it. And then, just maybe investigate the misgiving.
There's a net gain like 80% of the time for me, but 20% of the time it's like kills the magic. I don't understand it.
More to learn. That's why we're here, right? That there's more to learn. Thank you so much, Brian. I also see Annie, so I'm going to bring Annie up, and then I'm going to take a few minutes to wrap us up after that. Hi, Annie. Get the finger working on the mute button, I think. Oh, we turned off the video. So turn the video back on and go for the one next to it that says mute.
There you go.
Okay,
Here we go.
Back.
We got you.
Okay, I just got back from Florida. I exhibited in the Sanibel Shell Fair, but the experience of being there and getting there and everything was an enormous amount of synchronicity. So I have it's called Limbo Shells. It's a Facebook thing. And I'm going to be sharing on that the story of the synchronicity that got me there in the first place, because it fits. So if anybody wants to go to that Facebook, they'll also be able to know it. So I probably will mention the Coincidence Project and being with all of you, because you give me the confidence to keep going no matter how strange it gets.
Yeah,
It's strange. It always gets strange.
that's good news.
You'll be able to see the shells. I mean, I should never have been, I had a 17-foot table all by myself to share all the art and all teaching people how to do it. It was unprecedented. I mean, I've been in the show before. I only had a foot before. So it'll be interesting to share on this Facebook the coincidence part, because I can't talk about the story of the shells without talking about that. How I ended up there after an 80-year-old woman after 19 years not being there.
Wow.
So I have no idea how it's going to come out.
Thank you, Annie. That's wonderful. Such good news too. We're glad. We want this, another thing Bernie and I always talked about is making sure that there was reciprocity, that the Coincidence Project, we are enhanced by all of you, but we hope you are enhanced by all of us, and the project's existence itself, that there's a win-win, and we're all elevated, we're all supported in new ways. And Annie, from your story, it sounds like that's been happening some, which is
I've needed it, because I'm in Holland, Michigan, and there's not much here. It's a very conservative town.
Yep. And we're trying we can be one another's community now too, even though we're all in different places. Luckily, technology helps us in that. So yeah, I think I will just reflect a little bit on my breakout room and just lead a little short practice here. We've got about 14 minutes in our formal closing time left. We'll stay on a few minutes past. I think, Brooke, you can stay on maybe a few minutes past too. For those that don't need to leave right at half past the hour, you can stay on and we can keep talking. But we know some people will need to leave, so we always try to bring it to a nice logical stopping place. And then for those who are present, we'll talk another 15 or 20 minutes if you'd like. But my room was wonderful. I had Allison, and only for the duration of the breakout rooms, Anna Helene, one of the members of our board from the Netherlands, was able to join. And Allison is new to Coincidence Cafe, so welcome, Allison. This is her first cafe, and she can't come off mute or put her video on right now. So she was in our breakout room, and she could add things in the chat, but she was still glad to be in the chat and still glad to be listening to the exchange. And Anna Helene is a member of our board, lives in the Netherlands. She has a lovely TED Talk about meaningful coincidences. And it's on her profile page on our website. If you go to About, you can learn more about all of our board members and lots of our other presenters and folks that have been part of helping support the project. And we have profile pages with links to their work. So you can get to Anna Helene's TED Talk there. And she is in Bolivia at the moment and thought she couldn't join today, even though she has so many complex, layered, repeating, interesting coincidences. So she was really longing to be with us. And then the guide of her group said, I need a little break. Everybody go do what you want for 20 minutes. And it was the 20 minutes of the breakout. So I caught her up on a little bit about what we talked about and then said, Anna Helene, take it away. And she shared a beautiful, beautiful story that had multiple synchronicities. And she shared it before. So I do feel comfortable. I can share a little bit about this because it's something she's presented on publicly for us before. And she had a friend who was very sick and could have died. He was in Africa, in Benin, in a very remote location, very serious ailment with his stomach, not cancer, but something else. She sat at a big event. She sat next to a woman who was a doctor, and her mother had just died from something similar, and she had all of her mother's medications left. And as a doctor, she said, it sounds similar enough that I'm comfortable giving you all the medicine to get to your friend in Benin to treat him. And Anna Helene didn't know how that would happen. So then 2 days later, she sits next to another woman she doesn't know. They start talking together. That woman's traveling to Benin in a week. She says, could you take the medications for my friend? The woman says, yes, I could, but I need to get a laptop to a friend in Tanzania. Will you go there? She said, yes, actually. They were in Europe now. They're both randomly going to places in Africa. And she says, yes, actually, I'm traveling to Tanzania in 3 weeks. I'll take the laptop for your friend. Each person travels to Africa. The woman who she just met takes the medicine, but turns out she's 10 hours drive without a car from the man who needs the medicine. So then there were 2 more people that came and another series of coincidences, and they took the medicine. They were going to the village 10 hours away, and the medicine got to the friend. He did not die. He's okay. Then when Anna Helene got to Tanzania 2 weeks later, she found she was also 10 hours away and unable to travel to deliver the laptop where it was meant to go. Then it turns out a group of boys in her hotel are from her town of Groningen, Netherlands, and they're studying and have connections in the remote location in Tanzania. And they're able to take the laptop and it got where it needed to go. So we talked about this series of altruism and kindness and generosity and the universe helping things get where they need to go. Over and over and over, there were these 2 altruistic things that needed to happen, a laptop to be given and medicine to be provided to someone who was ill. And there's this flowing array of synchronicities that allowed it to happen. And there are whole books on the kindness of strangers. You know, you see a lot of these tales that when we are in need, something can arise that helps us to meet that need. You know, we can be open to being those people too, to being moved and flowing with what's unfolding in ways that, you know, help others when they're needing it, or, you know, and then we'll be helped as well, and the flow of those things. And then Allison posted this lovely question in our Aaron is putting in the chat. There's a My Unsung Hero is a show on NPR that has a lot of these stories as well. And Allison then asked of us, did we have something like a grounding or calming practice that we could do, a meditation, before we go out of our house to prepare ourselves to be more open, to maybe see more synchronicities unfold? And I'm also a meditation teacher, so her question deeply resonated with me. And I'd like to just guide us in just a little moment of practice together, you know, 4 or 5 minutes of something that I think came to me that might help us as a little practice to become more aware, more open, find ourselves in even more resonant ways with meaningful coincidences, synchronicity. So I invite you, just take a moment, and if you're comfortable, either kind of get your hands free, you know, and sit somewhere you're comfortable for a minute with your hands resting in your lap or on the legs, or however is most comfortable, depending on how you're sitting or laying right now. And you can close the eyes or just kind of look down towards the lap with a soft gaze. And just take a moment to really arrive in this moment. I know we're all kind of swirling probably with inspiration and ideas and stories, but let go of that. Just notice the in-breath of the body. It's already breathing. And notice the out-breath. For a moment, just allow the breath to be the main thing in your attention, the main thing in your focus. And now I invite you to also think about the grounding beneath you. Really feel into the seat, the chair or bench or ground or bed. Feel the hips settling you, connecting you to whatever's supporting your body right now. And maybe sway or shift your weight just a little to the left, a little to the right, kind of feeling a gentle rocking. Feel into the support you have in this moment. And then feel into your feet, the connection of your feet. If you're lying down or have your legs propped up, feel the connection from your hips all the way down to your feet. And even in our human-built structures, beneath us is the earth, is the ground. And you can sense flowing into the ground, connecting like a tree, connecting through your roots into the root system all around you. They're the roots of all the plants, trees, mushrooms, the mycelium, the rhizomes. And breathe with that ground. Breathe with the earth for a minute, drawing up nourishment from the roots in the earth. Breathing down and just sharing whatever you want to share with the earth. And we're always grounded. And we're always connected through the air, through the ether, through the earth, through the ground. And that's part of what meaningful coincidence and serendipity, synchronicity, it's part of what it brings to us. It's this shared, lived, felt sense of knowing we are connected, seeing we are connected. And through our breath, we're breathing in what the plants and trees have breathed out. So we're connected with all these other beings every breath. And what we exhale, they need, and we sustain them. So just preparing ourselves for whatever comes after this cafe moment, breathing in our connection, knowing how deeply entwined we are with all other beings. They say that half of our molecules in each of us, in each being on this planet, half of the molecules originated outside of the Milky Way, outside of our galaxy. So we're connected to the cosmos. We are the cosmos. We are connected to the earth and the natural world. And in fact, we are the natural world. There's nothing unnatural about us, although we often say us and then talk about nature. They're actually not separate. So we can all be more open and more receptive to the coincidences that are possible to our connectedness. And then slowly, with no rush, I invite you to maybe move a little, stretch a little, opening the eyes when you're ready, and returning to our connection with this group of folks, this beautiful group of folks here on the call now, and even the ones who are going to watch this in the future on Zoom.
Yeah,
And the YouTube later.
I often wonder the people watching, like if they connect to the stories, too. Like that's another layer that we just don't know. But yeah.
I think there are. So for those that may watch this in the future on the YouTube, if it connects, feel free to post in the YouTube chat. There's comments on the YouTube page if you had a connection, because we want the website to be a place where there's dialogue and sharing, and the YouTube can be one as well. And Delia also says she posts a 1-minute tonal meditation every day on her website, which is arcterrablog.com. And Allison, who made the request of us, did we have a calming and grounding practice that we could share, has shared in the chat. She's in the right place at the right time. It's what we hope to be, And Anna Helene, I asked her if she had anything to add after I mentioned this kind of practice. And she said, yes, also throw your wishes to the cosmos and let the cosmos, let the universe, reality, however we phrase it, let it meet you. And it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes by the poet Rumi, the Sufi poet Rumi, that I don't know the whole thing word for word by memory, so I'll paraphrase a little bit. But he says, whenever I run after what I think I want, my time is full of stress and despair. But when I sit still and let what I am seeking come to me, I find that what I was seeking was also seeking me.
I love that.
What
movie.
we are longing for is also longing for us. And, I like Brooke, in some of the stories you shared, you mentioned, the two friends of yours that had the same coincidence and they discovered it and then they shared it with you. And then it also became your coincidence to know that they both had the same experience. And
Yeah.
you were then an agent who's impacted, but they're also impacted. So we think about ourselves often because that's our point of view, our perspective. But in each of these different kinds of coincidences, particularly these layered and multiple swirling, relating kinds of ones, there's so many people involved. And it's, served or helped all of them too. So it's not just about us, this sort of, selfish or self-centered
Rippling.
tendency we have. Like, I want to experience it because it's cool. It's for me, but it's actually not just for us. There's the other person in every coincidence, or the other plant or the bird. What did it receive when the bird came? Who knows? We don't know because we can't necessarily, unless you're an animal communicator, we don't get a clear sense of what it was like for the other being when they're not human, when they're plants or trees or animals. But there are also always other beings involved in our coincidences. So we can also open up and kind of honor that maybe it's not just for us, but maybe they're also receiving something they needed, that
Well,
what
and
we seek is seeking us.
were you planning on sharing a Rumi quote? Because right before, we met right before this, and I shared a Rumi quote coincidence story. So I love that,
Yeah, I wasn't planning on it, no.
Yeah. All right. I mean, a lot of people like Rumi, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So we're right at the end of our time. So I just want to honor, for those that need to go, we thank you. We thank Brooke for helping to bring this day together. And we thank every one of you that was here. You all make this what it is, what it can be, and we are doing this together. We are co-creating this reality, this existence, and certainly this project together. So we're just so grateful to be with all of you. And please return. We have our speaker series every month in Cafe on the third Saturday of every month at this time. So thanks to everyone. And for those that are here to have a few extra minutes, be glad to hear from a few more folks, especially maybe somebody who hasn't had a chance to share yet. So please, if you would like to share something, welcome. And please do.
Quiet crew today.
I
Where's
know,
Kirby?
quiet crew and
Where's
active
Kirby?
chat.
Well, I wanted to talk some more, but I wanted to give some other people a chance to speak up first.
Brian.
Oh, I see somebody else whose name says Juliet Trail, but it's not actually Juliet Trail. I think you were trying to talk, so come off mute and tell us your name, and I'll change it. If you're able to click mute to come off mute.
Bernie also.
Oh,
There he
me?
is.
Oh, here I am. Is that me?
Yeah, that's you. So tell us your name.
James McCullough. The reason I'm late is I couldn't find this link anywhere. And I emailed, I don't know who I emailed, but I just found their response about 5 minutes ago, and I would have been here on time. But I'm glad to be here, and I've been going to his podcast for a while, Dr. Beitman, and I've been wanting to come here, but now is it the same link every month? It'll be the same. So
Yeah.
now I have the link. So next meeting next month, I'll be here on time.
That
That's
sounds
why.
great, James. Welcome.
Can I share a quick coincidence or no? Or is it?
Yeah, share a quick one.
Okay. So let's see. Oh yeah. So I'm a substitute teacher, and I'm reading attendance out loud. Bob Jones, Betty Jones, Sally Jones, and right before I say Tom Jones, Bob, whoever the next person, knock, knock, knock. he opens the door and it's the exact same next person on the attendance list. Okay, okay, that's all. But thank you for listening. And next month I'll be here on time.
That's great. And this was a really great session. I'll also post it to our YouTube channel. So you're welcome to go back and watch the replay for the part that you missed. And then you can feel that you were with us for the whole thing.
Search Brightman or Coincidence Cafe on YouTube. Is that how I find it? Yeah. I'll find it.
Yeah, you should be part of our email list. If you go to our website, thecoincidenceproject.net, you should get a pop-up that says, hey, please join our email list. And I send out the links to the YouTubes each time. I usually email about once a week at the most, and I'll send out the link to whatever is the newest YouTube.
What's the name of the website? What's the name of the website? Coincidence
The
what?
Coincidence Project.
The Coincidence Project.net.
Yeah.
.net. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
and just sign up there for our email list, and then we'll be sure to send you the links to things.
Oh, I did sign up. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks, James. So I see Sue, and then I think we had Brian want to speak again, and Annie will speak again. So Sue, to you next.
Hi, thanks. No, I was just wanted to mention, I think it was Brian who asked the question about the astrological connection and to Brooke. And I understand her response. I can appreciate that, especially because I think that only really can come in if you really are tuned into astrology and know what's going on and have the software to be able to do that research. I think when you are have an interest and the ability to do astrology, when things happen, you want to see what time is it. You want to know right then, because that would be the relevant thing to be looking at. How big of a consequence is this moment to me in my life? And if you don't note that down, you've lost that information. You have to be able to also look it up. And that's why you want to have the software. So that's kind of a really key thing. And that you wouldn't want to just say what's the zodiac sign going on right now. You want a lot of detail. So to let you know.
I just don't connect to it. I think, like, personally, I just think there are certain things we connect to, and it just doesn't, it's for me, I think it's a system. I don't resonate with it because it feels like, oh, there's 12 zodiac signs. To me, it feels kind of Myers-Briggs, like there's 12 personality types, or I feel it's boxy to me, but yeah.
That was initial, 30, actually more like almost 45 years ago. That was my initial thing. What the sky is like a pizza, it's cut up in 12. I was very skeptical, and it was only when I got into it really kind of at another I wanted to learn more about symbolism, and for some reason I did choose to look into the zodiac signs more fully. It's so much more than the 12 personalities.
No, yeah, for sure. And for you it is, but I'm just saying, like, like we all connect to different things, and for me it just doesn't
go there. It's because you have other goals obviously in your path, and so that's why I said right from the front, I appreciate what you said, but I just wanted to touch base with Brian because he had asked that, and I think he asked that actually in a breakout room last year. So,
and most people really resonate with it, so I'm an outlier a little bit there. Most people will really be like into it.
You're bringing another gift to us. That's the everybody's got this unique thing to bring, and so we can't all be doing the same thing. That'd be like having a town full of dentists.
Yeah, and I think, Sue's been one of our hosts of Cafe before, bringing some of her perspective on astrology, and we plan to have Sue back actually to lead a speaker series so she can talk in a little more depth, because she has she has, I don't know, something like 4 decades of experience or something now to share. So it was more than just a cafe's worth for sure. So Sue, you and I need to be in touch, try to nail down a date. We want to bring you back for those curious about astrology, to bring her on and talk in more depth, because she has a very subtle, complex perspective that's very deep. And I have got a reading from her in order to learn more about Sue's insights, and personally found it very revealing and interesting. So that was great. Let's let Julian speak next because we haven't heard aloud from Julian, and then we'll have Brian again and Annie again. So Julian, come off mute. Hey, there you are. We could see you. Haha, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much. I was having some technical difficulties on my mobile phone, but glad I could join on my laptop here, and appreciate the opportunity to just join at the after party. But wanted to share something quickly with the group and also with Brooke, because she had mentioned a certain bird, and so we have this bird throughout the house. It is in the house, I do have to say, but it's this guy here. I'm not sure if you can see, but it is
So here, right?
a heron.
Oh,
I'm not sure if
Just a little higher. Put him right in front of your face.
okay.
Yeah,
It looks
there
like
we go.
an egret, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm not that's like a specialist or anything in here.
Yeah, so I think I've done a little bit of research, and I think egrets do fit into the heron category. And I went to a store, it's kind of like spiritually related, and kind of went there with the intention of finding something for my wife. And the heron is something that comes into our neighborhood, you know, in the summer, so we're always looking out for them. And yeah, this one was at the store, and when I looked at the label, it actually said heron. So I was like, okay, that's a special treat. But we do have it, quite a few either pictures or you know, statutes or whatever in the house. So I thought it was kind of cool that you had mentioned the heron. So thank you very much, and love the story and all of the coincidences that, you know, connected with a variety of people. Thank you.
Thanks, Julian, and welcome. Is this your first cafe with us?
No, actually, I've been to a few cafes.
Okay.
Usually, you know, jump in. Can I share one quick
Oh
story?
yeah, sure,
Okay.
sure, please.
Awesome, thank you. So I was on, I believe it was the last call. I had to run to the grocery store and only had like maybe 15 minutes. But when I jumped in, the person, I think he was talking about crystals or stones, but he had made the comment of a rose window. And you know, the rose was actually something that over the last month has been popping up for me quite frequently. Like I've been, you know, seeing synchronicities, but this one has been like pretty frequent. And so just after he had mentioned that, we went into the breakout rooms. I was going to say something about near-death experience, but because he had mentioned the rose window, I just said to the group, hey, I've been experiencing these rose synchronicities. And one of the ladies on the call said she too had experienced some rose synchronicities, and actually spoke to her earlier this morning, and we kind of shared some of those. But she had sent me a video of someone who I guess was on an airplane. Things were getting a little maybe antsy for him, and he remembered his wife saying, like, do meditation and think of roses. And when he opened his eyes, there's a gentleman in front of him that had tattoos of roses, like on his head, on his arm, you know, all over the place. What was interesting for me is that I was actually in the grocery store and had seen, you know, a lady with a rose on her neck. And then just a couple of days ago, I was telling these stories to my neighbor, and lo and behold, he also is like, hey, I actually have a tattoo of a rose on my arm. So just interesting how the rose has been popping up quite a bit.
Ah, that's wonderful. It's like the lily pads, you know, you're getting all the way across the pond, just connecting on rose coincidences.
Right.
And then there's another way that just the heron coincidences, you know,
Exactly,
like multiple pathways of, and then this, and then this, and then this. Yeah.
And you know, I'm very grateful for the cafe, just because, you know, hearing a lot of coincidences and meaningful coincidences kind of validates in some ways at least what I have, and knowing that, you know, maybe I'm not crazy.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank
We're
you.
glad to be here to reassure all of us that we're not necessarily nuts. So Brian and then Annie and then Danielle has raised her hand. I think Brian, you were the next one who mentioned you'd like to speak again.
Oh, I was just gonna say, isn't it great that so many of you have these uh, really complex hyper coincidences? It can be a wonderful indication, not always, but most of the time, I think it's a wonderful indication that you can be on your highest and best path, and I think that's terrific. And I know that sometimes that from my personal experience as well, but also the way the mechanics of these things work, sometimes things don't always work out the way we want them to, but that's also part of the yin and yang of how this reality works, the contrast between resistance and ease and light and dark. And there's a constant interplay at this level between that. Anyway, thanks so much for having me.
Good to see you again, Brian.
Take good care.
Thank you. Annie and then Danielle.
Yes, thank you, Julia. You mentioned about the two-way street with coincidences and needs.
Mm.
And I need stores to feature the shells because they have a message. And I realized that I need to focus on the stores themselves needing my shells.
Mm.
You know, and I've never looked at it that way. So I'm going to share that on the Limbo shelf on my Facebook because I've asked a lot of people to find stores, and I'll flip it around. I'll say it kind of the way you did. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, so may the stores that need you find their way to you now.
There's stores looking for this environmental art
Yes.
that have science behind it. So that's why it's Limbo, art and science together.
Hmm.
I'll put that in her thing in the chat. It's called Limbo Shells. I haven't checked it out, but in case anyone wants to look it up.
Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Annie. Danielle, hi, welcome back. You're welcome to come off mute. Yeah.
Hello, good to be here again. I was in the group with Brian and Julian, and Brian brought up the story about me leaving my occupation, and I was getting all these signs that yes, you're on the right path. Yes, quit. Yay. And then I wouldn't say it all came crashing down, but the outcome wasn't what I expected. But then on this call, I realized, wait a second, in months past, there were synchronicities telling me something negative, like a totally different situation in my life was going to happen. And I did not go with the flow with those synchronicities because I didn't want this thing to happen, obviously, and it didn't. And I steered myself away from that negative thing from happening, and it's been really great. So it's like, okay, I get these negative synchronicities. I don't want those synchronicities to happen, and then they don't. But then I get these positive synchronicities about this thing that I do want to happen, and it's happening in a way I didn't expect. So it's like, I don't know what I'm asking or if I'm even asking anything. I just think it's weird that both of these, it's like there's no, I want there to be a formula, but there's like no formula.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a formula, it's pretty complex.
Yeah.
And I think, we have to really develop that discernment. Just because there's a series of synchronicities doesn't mean we long for that outcome of where they're leading, as you're articulating. There can be a series of things that you can see that the downstream effect of going with that flow is actually not something you want to opt into. And so it helps you to choose away from, and it is important to kind of hone your intuition, and make sure to talk it over with friends and journal and ask trusted wise ones, about situations if you're not sure, because it's fine to have some help to cultivate that intuition and that discernment, because coincidences, I think, are just another form of technology. And we don't fully understand all the operating principles of this reality, of this universe. But coincidences are clearly baked in. They're happening all over the world to all of us all the time, regardless
an
of our
algorithm.
continent or age or education level or belief system or lack of a religion or any of this stuff. None of it matters. There's still coincidences unfolding. And so how we navigate those currents, I think, is part of why we're here in the Coincidence Project, is to try to bring some collective wisdom to asking this question, how do we have the discernment that will serve us best as these coincidences unfold? Because just like any technology, the internet is not a positive or negative thing. It can be used for positive and negative things. The printed word was not in it inherently a positive or negative thing. It has been used to do harm, and it has been used to help humanity. And so with all forms of information and technology, it is important to have kind of a moral or ethical insight into how it might harm or better, and we thought about that for Coincidence Project too. Could we help to begin to articulate like an ethical statement for humanity? Because algorithms for advertisers are trying to tap into this and trying to miraculously show you this product in order to sell you crap that you likely with discernment don't really need. But maybe the algorithm is helping you and there is something you really need. And because it's watching what you did in all these other websites, it gives you certain opportunities and certain links and new websites. So there's a little piece of like manipulating this now that technology can sort of mirror coincidences. But there's other times when, there's conversations that I've had out walking in nature, no technology, was listening in. And then a playlist comes on that has 800 songs, and the lyrics of the first song that the algorithm chose to play out of 800 songs on shuffle is the answer to that conversation. There's no way it could actually be listening in a literal, linear, causal way. And yet technology is selecting something that then responds to or amplifies or shed some light on something. So there's this piece of being manipulated for consumerism and selling us stuff. But I think technology is also in itself, electrical based technologies are still hosting coincidences for us. And again, none of it has to be inherently negative or positive. We have to have our discernment on.
Yes. And I think what you said really resonates with me. And I think it's also be my last thing, because I think it's going off of what you said about like the written word. It's not inherently bad or good. Like, it's synchronicity and coincidence. It's a tool. And if my life is a house and I'm building this house, synchronicity can be a hammer. Like, it's going to be great. I'm going to need that hammer. That's a wonderful thing to have, but I'm going to need a lot more tools to build this house. So yeah.
And it's synchronicity, and I like to think of synchronicity itself as an algorithm, right? And sometimes you just get that one hit, and sometimes you get like this crazy web of stuff. But like, I think that's an interesting thought when you think about algorithms. Like,
totally.
Yeah. And Sue posted in the chat, technology is not external to the matrix, so to speak. Technology is still of this world.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I was saying, even in that short guided practice I did near the end there, is that, we talk about us and then we talk about nature as if they're separate things. But what is natural? What is not natural? We've invented metal. Because it's metal, is it not natural? It's a natural phenomena harvested from things that exist on the planet. So we have this sort of false dichotomy that we've set up, that we're separate from things. Or we're separate from synchronicity, or that we're separate from technology, or that technology is separate from nature, the earth, the natural world. I'm not sure these separations really serve us very well. We're actually deeply embedded and connected. And then how do we work with being embedded, being connected, being interdependent, and influencing and being influenced by everything around us, really?
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
I really appreciated the meditation that you did, and something I didn't mention today about me is that I do like a lot. Like I probably do about 6 hours of meditation a day. Like that's how much I do for a good couple years now. I'm trying to heal myself, so why? Otherwise, I would be doing other things in my day. But I will say, I think meditation can really open you up to this kind of stuff. But at the same time, like I had a couple months with just tons of synchronicities, and then right now they're dried up and they're gone. I'm still doing the same amount of meditation every day. Like whatever the formula is, we're still trying to figure out. It's not just that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. We can be open to things and receptive that things are possible. It doesn't mean they rush and fit a certain kind of, they show up in a certain way or in a certain time frame. And a lot of times if we struggle with that and we try to clamp down, but it has to be like this and I need it like this, it'll run away even further. There's something to holding our needs, our questions, our longings, our intentions loosely without a vice grip on them, because then we strangle them and they just don't thrive. So we have to surrender some of the control, and some periods seem to be rich and some periods seem to be dry, just like the seasons, right? There's not always flowers, there's not always fruit, there's not always leaves on the trees. There's fallow periods as well, but they're all part of the cycle. So not necessarily a bad thing to have a dry period, a dry spell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, well, we've gotten a little over, but we always have a rich conversation when we do. I thank everyone for being here and staying on a little extra. It's nice to get to know some of you a bit more, and please do come back and join us. So you're welcome to come off mute. We can maybe bid each other adieu.
See you next
Every
time.
month, the third Saturday, 11 a.m.
Correct. 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Same link I got
Same
here
link.
today.
Same link. Yeah.
I'm going to email you for a reading, even though I'm still open to astrology. So I'm going to email you.
I recommend Sue. She's a very good astrology reader. So
thank you, Juliet. Thank you.
And Sue, email me. Let's get a date on the books for you to lead speaker series for us this summer.
Thank you so much.
Does she have a website presence? Does she have a website, The Astrologer?
Do you have a website, Sue?
Yes.
No more Plutos.
No, more Plutos.
More Plutos.
Moreplutos.com. I'll put it in the chat.
There, I put it. Moreplutos.com.
There, yeah, Juliet has it there. It's
Anyone
because
else that wants to give me a reading, I'm open. Anyone?
Yeah, the more Plutos is because I work with the new planets that were just discovered in this century, the Eris and these other called dwarf planets, which are actually some are quite large.
That's where my skepticism comes in, because it's like this planet's there, it's not there, the poles change, like how, but yet it's all, we figured it all out, but then there's new stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
all over that new
always
stuff.
changing. It's similar to our civilization, our consciousness, where new things are always coming. Things that were considered crazy, they end up getting mainstreamed. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yes, I'll talk to Juliet and Brooke, both of you. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much. Good talking to you.
All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Okay.